The information provided in this video is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute professional, legal, or financial advice regarding vehicle acquisition, operation, or maintenance. Automotive regulations, safety standards, and market values vary significantly by state and over time. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence, consult with certified automotive professionals, and review official Department of Motor Vehicles guidelines before making any purchasing decisions or modifications. The creators of this content are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information presented herein. Most Americans spend an average of 18 days a year stuck inside their cars, yet the vast majority of people have no idea that the vehicle they are driving might be fundamentally mismatched for their actual lifestyle, safety needs, or long-term financial health. We treat one of the most expensive purchases of our lives like a casual wardrobe choice, often influenced more by a catchy television commercial than by the engineering physics of the chassis or the historical depreciation trends of specific segments. Right now, there is a quiet but massive shift happening in the American driveway. The traditional sedan, once the king of the suburbs, is facing a near-extinction event, while massive three-row SUVs and specialized electric platforms are rewriting the rules of the road. If you do not understand the mechanical DNA of what you are driving, you are likely overpaying for capabilities you never use, or worse, sacrificing safety features that could be vital in a high-stakes highway scenario. This is not just about four wheels and an engine. This is about understanding the complex ecosystem of American transportation. This masterclass is designed to solve the primary point of confusion for the modern American consumer: the paradox of choice. Today, the lines between a crossover and an SUV have blurred so significantly that even some dealership representatives cannot explain the structural differences. We are going to deconstruct the entire U.S. vehicle market from the ground up. By the end of this series, you will possess the technical literacy to look at any vehicle on a lot and immediately identify its platform type, its primary engineering trade-offs, and its historical reliability patterns. We are stripping away the marketing jargon to give you the raw data and mechanical reality of the American road. To truly understand where we are, we have to look at the foundational architecture of the American vehicle. In the United States, vehicles are categorized by a combination of their gross vehicle weight rating, their intended use case, and their frame construction. The first major distinction you must master is the difference between unibody construction and body-on-frame construction. This is the hidden blueprint that dictates almost everything about how a vehicle handles, how it protects you in a crash, and how much it can tow. Historically, almost all American vehicles were body-on-frame. This is a traditional method where a rigid steel ladder frame is built first, and then the engine, drivetrain, and body are bolted onto it. This is the DNA of the pickup truck and the heavy-duty SUV. If you look at a Chevrolet Silverado or a Ford F-150 today, you are looking at the evolution of this rugged, work-oriented architecture. The primary advantage here is sheer strength and torsional rigidity for towing. When you are pulling a 10,000-pound trailer, you want that weight distributed across a solid steel frame, not a thin metal shell. However, the trade-off is weight and handling. Body-on-frame vehicles typically have a higher center of gravity and a truck-like ride quality that can feel bouncy or disconnected on paved city streets. In contrast, the unibody construction, which now dominates the sedan, hatchback, and crossover markets, integrates the frame and the body into a single cohesive unit. Think of it like an exoskeleton. This design allows for significantly lighter vehicles, which translates directly into the potential outcomes of better fuel efficiency and more responsive, car-like handling. Because the body itself provides the structural integrity, engineers can design sophisticated crumple zones that absorb impact energy more effectively than a rigid steel ladder. This is why a modern Honda Civic or a Toyota Camry feels so much more planted in a sharp turn than a vintage SUV. As we dive into the specific categories, we must start with the segment that defined the American middle class for decades: the sedan. While sales have dipped in favor of larger vehicles, the sedan remains the benchmark for aerodynamic efficiency and center of gravity stability. In the U.S. market, sedans are generally split into three subcategories based on interior volume, as defined by the Environmental Protection Agency. First, you have the subcompact and compact sedans. These are the entry points for millions of Americans. Examples like the Toyota Corolla or the Hyundai Elantra are engineered for high-density urban environments. They utilize small displacement, often turbocharged four-cylinder engines. The engineering focus here is on maximizing interior packaging, finding ways to give passengers more legroom without increasing the exterior footprint. This is achieved through transverse engine layouts, where the engine is mounted sideways to save space in the front of the car. Moving up the ladder, we reach the midsize sedan, the historical Goldilocks of the US market. The Honda Accord and the Nissan Altima represent this tier. These vehicles typically offer a wheelbase, the distance between the front and rear wheels, that balances ride comfort with maneuverability. A longer wheelbase generally results in a smoother ride because the vehicle is less susceptible to the pitching motion caused by bumps in the road. In this segment, you begin to see a heavy emphasis on multi-link rear suspension systems. Unlike a basic torsion beam setup found in cheaper cars, a multi-link system allows each wheel to react independently to road imperfections, maintaining more tire contact with the asphalt and improving safety during emergency maneuvers. Then there are the full-size sedans, such as the Chrysler 300 or the Dodge Charger. These are increasingly rare but remain vital for those who prioritize highway cruising comfort and shoulder room. These vehicles often feature rear-wheel drive architectures, which move the task of steering to the front wheels and the task of propulsion to the rear. This separation of duties allows for a more balanced weight distribution, typically closer to a 50-50 split between the front and rear axles, which provides a more stable and planted feeling at high speeds. However, we cannot discuss the American road without addressing the meteoric rise of the crossover utility vehicle, or CUV. This is perhaps the most misunderstood term in the automotive world. A crossover is, by definition, a vehicle that uses a unibody car platform but features the raised ride height and two-box design of an SUV. When you see a Toyota RAV4 or a Ford Escape, you are essentially looking at a lifted Camry or Focus. The appeal here is the H-point, the height of the driver's hip relative to the ground. A higher H-point allows for easier entry and exit and provides a commanding view of traffic, which many U.S. drivers cite as a primary safety preference. But there is a mechanical cost to this height. By raising the vehicle, you raise the center of mass. To prevent these vehicles from tipping over in a sharp turn, engineers must stiffen the suspension. This is why many crossovers can feel stiffer, or more jittery, over potholes than their sedan counterparts. Furthermore, the boxy shape creates more aerodynamic drag. At highway speeds, a crossover has to push significantly more air out of its way than a sleek sedan, which historically led to lower fuel economy, though modern advancements in transmission gearing and hybrid powertrains have begun to close this gap. As we progress through this guide, we will move into the heavy hitters, the true SUVs, the pickup trucks that power American industry, and the emerging electric platforms that are ditching internal combustion entirely. We are going to look at the three-row phenomenon, exploring why American families have abandoned the minivan for the SUV look, even when the minivan offers superior sliding door utility and lower loading floors. We will analyze the physics of all-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive, two terms often used interchangeably by salespeople, but which represent completely different mechanical systems designed for completely different environments. Understanding these nuances is the difference between being a passive passenger and an informed owner. Would you like me to expand on the specific mechanical differences between all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive systems for the next section? To understand why your vehicle behaves the way it does in a Michigan snowstorm or a Texas flash flood, we must dismantle the marketing myth that all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive are the same thing. In 2026, many consumers walk onto a dealership lot and see these labels used interchangeably, but the mechanical reality is governed by the laws of physics and torque distribution. Imagine a driver named Alex living in Denver. Alex buys a crossover with all-wheel drive because the salesperson mentions it provides extra grip. On a paved, icy highway, Alex feels secure. However, if Alex tries to take that same vehicle onto a serious off-road trail in Moab, the system might overheat or fail to provide the necessary traction to climb a steep, rocky incline. This happens because all-wheel drive is an automated, high-speed system designed for varying road conditions, whereas four-wheel drive is a manual or selectable heavy-duty system designed for maximum torque in low-traction environments. All-wheel drive, or AWD, is typically found in unibody cars and crossovers. The core component of an AWD system is a center differential or a sophisticated multi-plate clutch pack. In modern 2026 models, these systems are increasingly proactive rather than reactive. Sensors at each wheel monitor speed, steering angle, and throttle position thousands of times per second. If the system detects that the front wheels are beginning to slip on a patch of black ice, it can instantaneously send a percentage of the engine's power to the rear wheels. The beauty of AWD is that it requires zero input from the driver. It is always on, providing a seamless transition from two-wheel drive to four-wheel drive as needed. This makes it ideal for the potential outcomes of improved stability during rain, light snow, and spirited cornering on dry pavement. However, because AWD relies on a center differential that allows the front and rear axles to rotate at different speeds, it is not built for sustained, extreme stress. If one wheel is suspended in the air on a rocky trail, a basic AWD system might simply spin that wheel while the others remain stationary, effectively leaving the vehicle stuck. Four-wheel drive, or 4WD, is the rugged older brother of AWD, almost exclusively found on body-on-frame trucks and dedicated off-road SUVs like the Jeep Wrangler or the Ford Bronco. The heart of a 4WD system is the transfer case. When a driver like Sarah, who manages a ranch in Wyoming, shifts her truck into 4WD high or 4WD low, she is mechanically locking the front and rear driveshafts together. This means both axles must turn at the exact same speed. In 4WD low, the transfer case uses an extra set of gears to multiply the engine's torque, allowing the vehicle to crawl over massive obstacles or pull heavy loads out of deep mud at very low speeds. The downside to this mechanical lock is that you cannot use 4WD on dry, paved roads. If you try to turn a 4WD vehicle on dry pavement while the system is engaged, the tires will hop and the drivetrain will bind because the inner and outer wheels cannot rotate at the different speeds required to complete a turn. This is known as crow hopping and can lead to expensive mechanical failures. Historical trends show that while 4WD offers ultimate capability, the convenience of modern AWD has made it the more popular choice for 90% of American drivers who rarely leave the asphalt. This leads us to the great American identity crisis, the SUV versus the minivan. If we look at a typical suburban family in 2026, perhaps led by characters like Mark and Elena in Charlotte, North Carolina, they are likely choosing between a three-row SUV and a minivan. From a purely engineering and utilitarian perspective, the minivan is the superior tool for moving people. It features a lower floor, which is a result of its car-based unibody construction, making it easier for children and elderly passengers to climb inside. The sliding doors are a marvel of spatial efficiency, allowing access in tight parking spots where a traditional SUV door would be blocked. However, the American market has shifted toward the SUV for reasons of perceived capability and image. The modern midsize SUV, such as the Kia Telluride or the Honda Pilot, has effectively replaced the station wagon and the minivan for the average consumer. These vehicles provide a higher ground clearance, often between 7 and 9 inches, which offers a psychological sense of safety and the practical ability to clear deep snow drifts or navigate poorly maintained gravel roads. But we must look at the data regarding interior volume. A modern minivan often provides over 140 cubic feet of cargo space with the seats stowed, whereas a similarly sized three-row SUV might only offer 80 to 90 cubic feet. The trade-off for that rugged SUV aesthetic is a significant loss in actual usable room and a higher center of gravity that increases the risk of a rollover during emergency swerving maneuvers. Then we have the behemoths of the segment, the full-size SUV. Think of the Chevrolet Suburban or the Cadillac Escalade. These are not just large cars. They are essentially heavy-duty pickup trucks with an enclosed cabin. They utilize the body-on-frame construction we discussed in Part 1, allowing them to tow upwards of 8,000 pounds. For a family that needs to transport 7 people while also pulling a 26-foot boat to the lake, these are the only viable options. The engineering challenge here is mass. A fully loaded Suburban can weigh nearly 3 tons. To stop that much momentum, these vehicles require massive ventilated disc brakes and heavy-duty cooling systems for the transmission and engine. The fuel consumption is historically higher, though the potential outcomes of new diesel and hybrid powertrains in 2026 have pushed highway efficiency into the mid-20s for the first time in history. But as these vehicles grow larger and more complex, a new contender has entered the arena, threatening to make traditional gasoline engines obsolete. We are entering the era of the dedicated EV platform. Unlike a gasoline car, which has to package an engine, a transmission, and a fuel tank, an electric vehicle is built like a skateboard. The battery pack sits in the floor, and the motors are located directly on the axles. This creates a revolutionary change in vehicle architecture. It allows for a flat floor inside the cabin, giving a compact-sized EV the interior room of a mid-sized sedan. It also lowers the center of gravity to a point that was previously impossible for an SUV, significantly reducing rollover risks and improving handling. Case studies of early adopters in 2026 show that while the initial purchase price of an EV might be higher, The historical trends of lower maintenance costs, due to having hundreds of fewer moving parts, are beginning to shift the total cost of ownership in the consumer's favor. However, this transition brings its own set of technical hurdles. We have to talk about curb weight. Because batteries are incredibly heavy, an electric SUV can weigh 1,000 pounds more than its gasoline equivalent. This puts unprecedented stress on tires and suspension components, and it raises serious questions about the impact on American infrastructure and road safety in multi-vehicle collisions. We have covered the frame, the drive systems, and the battle between utility and style. But there is one category of vehicle that remains the undisputed king of the American economy, accounting for the highest volume of sales year after year. It is a vehicle that has evolved from a simple farm tool into a $100,000 luxury status symbol that can also haul 2 tons of gravel. If you think you understand the American pickup truck, you are only seeing the surface. In the next part, we are going to strip back the chrome and look at the heavy-duty engineering that allows these machines to literally move the nation, and why the segment is currently facing its biggest controversy in half a century. Do you know the difference between a half-ton and a 1-ton truck, and why those labels are actually a lie? We are going to find out. The American pickup truck is the undisputed champion of the road, but the terminology we use to describe them is a relic of a bygone era. If you walk into a dealership in 2026 and ask for a half-ton truck, you are using a label that hasn't been literally true since the middle of the last century. Historically, these terms, half-ton, 3/4 ton, and 1-ton, referred to the payload capacity of the vehicle. A half-ton truck was supposed to carry 1,000 pounds. Today, a modern half-ton like the Ford F-150 or the Ram 1500 can often carry closer to 2,000 pounds in its bed, while a 1-ton dually can move over 7,000 pounds. The labels have stuck around because they serve as a shorthand for the vehicle's classification and capability tier, but the engineering underneath has evolved into something far more sophisticated than a simple weight rating. Imagine a business owner named Jordan in Phoenix, Arizona. Jordan runs a landscaping company and needs a vehicle that can handle both the daily commute and the heavy lifting of transporting pavers and equipment. If Jordan chooses a light-duty or 1500 series truck, he is getting a vehicle designed for a balance of comfort and utility. These trucks utilize independent front suspensions and, in many modern cases, coil springs or even air suspension in the rear. This allows the truck to ride almost as smoothly as a luxury sedan when the bed is empty. However, the limitation of a light-duty truck appears when you push its gross combined weight rating to the limit. The frame is thinner, the brakes are smaller, and the cooling systems are optimized for occasional towing rather than constant, high-stress labor. As we move into the heavy-duty or HD segment, which includes the 2500 and 3500 series, the engineering philosophy shifts entirely. These are the workhorses of American industry. A character like Robert, who operates a long-haul horse transport business in Kentucky, wouldn't look twice at a light-duty truck. He needs a 3500 series dually. The term dually refers to the dual rear wheels on each side of the axle. This setup serves a critical safety and engineering purpose. It spreads the massive tongue weight of a gooseneck trailer over 4 tires instead of 2, significantly increasing stability and preventing tire failure under extreme loads. In these heavy-duty machines, you will often find massive turbo-diesel engines. In 2026, these engines are producing over 1,000 pound-feet of torque. To put that in perspective, a standard compact car might produce 150. This torque is necessary not for speed, but for the potential outcomes of moving 20,000 pounds up a 6% grade in the Rocky Mountains without overheating the transmission. The frames on these trucks are fully boxed and made of high-strength steel, designed to resist twisting forces that would literally bend a lesser vehicle. The trade-off for this capability is a ride quality that can be jarringly stiff when the truck is empty, as the leaf spring suspension is designed to compress under thousands of pounds of pressure to reach its optimal operating state. Beyond the mechanical specs, we have to address the massive shift in the American pickup's role as a status symbol. Case studies of consumer behavior in 2026 show that a significant portion of pickup truck buyers rarely use the bed for anything more than groceries. This has led to the rise of the luxury truck. Vehicles like the GMC Sierra Denali Ultimate or the Ford F-150 Limited now feature open-pore wood trim, massaging leather seats, and 20-speaker sound systems. This creates a fascinating engineering paradox. Manufacturers must build a machine capable of towing a trailer through a construction site, while providing the interior serenity of a German executive car. This is achieved through advanced technologies like active noise cancellation and magnetorheological dampers, which use magnetic fluid to adjust the suspension stiffness hundreds of times per second. But there is a growing controversy in this segment that is reshaping the American suburban landscape. As trucks have become more capable, they have also become significantly larger. The hood height of a modern heavy-duty truck can be over 5 feet tall, creating massive blind spots directly in front of the vehicle. In 2026, this has sparked intense debate regarding pedestrian safety and urban planning. Many cities are beginning to discuss size-based registration fees, as these massive vehicles put exponentially more wear and tear on asphalt and take up more space in public parking structures. While the full-size truck dominates the headlines, we cannot ignore the resurgence of the midsize and compact truck segments. For years, the midsize market was stagnant, but in the current 2026 landscape, vehicles like the Chevrolet Colorado and the Toyota Tacoma have seen a massive influx of interest from the overlanding community. Overlanding is a trend where enthusiasts like Maya in Seattle modify their trucks with rooftop tents, auxiliary lighting, and specialized suspension to travel long distances off-road. These midsize trucks offer a narrower track width than their full-size counterparts, allowing them to navigate tight forest trails that would be impassable for a wide-body dually. And then there is the newcomer that has disrupted everything: the compact unibody truck. The Ford Maverick and the Hyundai Santa Cruz represent a return to the mini-truck roots, but with a modern twist. These are not built on ladder frames, they are built on crossover platforms. This means they drive like cars, get excellent fuel economy, and fit in a standard garage, yet they offer a truck bed for DIY projects and outdoor gear. They represent the potential outcomes of a market that realized not everyone needs to tow a bulldozer. Sometimes, you just need to haul a few mountain bikes or some mulch from the home improvement store. The pickup truck is the Swiss Army knife of the US vehicle market. It is a tool, a toy, and a boardroom on wheels. But even the most powerful truck is limited by the fuel it consumes and the emissions it produces. This brings us to a critical junction in our masterclass. We have talked about the physical shapes and the mechanical frames, but we haven't talked about the heart of the machine. The internal combustion engine is facing its greatest challenge yet, not just from electricity, but from a dizzying array of hybrid configurations that most people don't understand. Is a plug-in hybrid actually better than a standard hybrid? Why are some engines getting smaller while the vehicles get bigger? And what is the real-world data on how long these complex new powertrains actually last? Imagine if you bought a vehicle thinking you were saving the planet, only to find out your specific driving habits were making the engine wear out twice as fast. We are moving from the body of the vehicle into the engine bay, and what we find there in 2026 might surprise you. There is a specific type of engine being phased out right now that has been the backbone of American reliability for 40 years. Do you know which one it is and why its replacement might be a ticking time bomb for your wallet? We are going to dive into the world of powertrains next. The shift under the hood of the American vehicle in 2026 is nothing short of a mechanical revolution, and it is centered on a single high-stakes trade-off: displacement versus efficiency. For 40 years, the naturally aspirated V8 engine was the undisputed heartbeat of the US automotive landscape. It was simple, reliable, and provided linear power. But today, if you look at the new vehicle showrooms in 2026, the large displacement V8 has largely been displaced. Even iconic names are shifting. The 6.4-liter Hemi V8, once a staple of American muscle and heavy-duty capability, is now a specialty item, often found only in low-volume, high-performance trims like the Jeep Wrangler Moab 392. For the average consumer, the V8 is being replaced by smaller, turbocharged 4-cylinder and V6 engines. This is not just a trend. It is a necessity driven by corporate average fuel economy or CAFE standards, which in 2026 require an industry-wide target of roughly 49 miles per gallon. To understand why this matters for your long-term ownership, you have to understand the physics of forced induction. A traditional V8 engine is like a large pair of lungs. It breathes in air naturally. A downsized turbocharged engine is like a smaller pair of lungs being forced to breathe through a high-pressure straw. By using a turbocharger to cram more air into a smaller combustion chamber, engineers can make a 2.0-liter 4-cylinder engine produce the same horsepower as an old 5.0-liter V8. The potential outcomes of this are impressive. You get the fuel economy of a small car during a light commute, but the power of a truck when you merge onto the highway. However, this comes with a massive increase in internal thermal stress. Imagine a driver named Mike in 2026, living in the suburbs of Chicago. Mike drives a modern crossover with a small high-output turbocharged engine. Because the engine is smaller, it has to work much harder to move the vehicle's 2-ton mass. The turbocharger itself spins at over 100,000 revolutions per minute and operates at temperatures that can make the metal glow red. This creates a reliance on sophisticated cooling systems and high-quality synthetic oils that simply did not exist 20 years ago. Historical trends suggest that while these engines can be incredibly durable, they are less forgiving of skipped maintenance. If Mike misses an oil change, the oil inside the turbocharger can coke or turn into a hard carbon sludge, leading to a catastrophic and expensive failure that a low-stress V8 might have survived for years. Then there is the ticking time bomb of gasoline direct injection, or GDI, which is the standard fuel delivery system in 2026. In an older engine, fuel was sprayed behind the intake valves, essentially washing them clean of carbon every time you drove. In a GDI engine, the fuel is sprayed directly into the combustion chamber. This makes the engine more efficient, but it means the intake valves are never cleaned by the fuel. Over 50 or 60,000 miles, carbon deposits from the crankcase ventilation system build up on these valves like a thick, black crust. This leads to the symptoms many 2026 drivers are starting to notice: a rough idle, hesitating acceleration, and a sudden drop in fuel economy. The only real solution is a specialized service called walnut shell blasting, where a technician literally blasts the valves clean with crushed walnut shells. This is a maintenance cost that almost no one budget for when they bought their car. Moving beyond pure internal combustion, we must look at the hybrid spectrum that is dominating the 2026 market. This is where most consumers get confused. There are 3 distinct levels: mild hybrids, full hybrids, and plug-in hybrids. A mild hybrid is essentially a traditional gas car with a beefed-up starter motor that can help the engine during acceleration. It cannot drive on electricity alone. A full hybrid, or HEV, like the Toyota Prius or the hybrid Ford F-150, has a larger battery and a motor that can take over at low speeds. These are the current leaders in market share because they require no change in driver behavior. You just put gas in and go. But the real engineering marvel of 2026 is the plug-in hybrid, or PHEV. Imagine a driver named Sarah in Seattle. Sarah's PHEV has a battery large enough to drive 40 miles on electricity alone, which covers her entire daily commute. She plugs it in at night like a cell phone. But if she wants to drive to visit family in another state, the gasoline engine kicks in, and she has 1,000 miles of total range. This is the best of both worlds solution for the current infrastructure reality. However, case studies show that the complexity of a PHEV is significant. You are essentially carrying 2 separate powertrains: a complex internal combustion engine and a high-voltage electric system. This added weight can put more stress on the tires and suspension, and the long-term reliability of these dual-heart vehicles is one of the most watched data points in the industry today. And finally, we have the full battery electric vehicle, or BEV. In 2026, the conversation has shifted from, can they work, to, how do we support them? The skateboard chassis we mentioned earlier allows for incredible interior space, but the weight of the battery pack remains the primary engineering hurdle. A large electric SUV can weigh 6,000 pounds. This mass affects everything from braking distances to the way the vehicle handles in a slide. Furthermore, while the North American charging standard has unified most public chargers, the reality of charging anxiety still persists for those who live in apartments or rural areas without a dedicated home charger. We have explored the frames, the bodies, and the complex engines that power the American journey. You now understand that the choice between a Turbo 4, a hybrid, or a V8 is a choice between immediate efficiency and long-term simplicity. But there is one final, critical factor that dictates what Americans buy, more than engine size or fuel type. It is the concept of safety. We have a psychological obsession with being the biggest thing on the road. We buy massive SUVs because we believe they protect us. But the data on vehicle size and occupant safety in 2026 tells a much more complicated and sometimes darker story. Are you actually safer in that 6,000-pound SUV? Or are you just more dangerous to everyone else? We are going to look at the physics of the safety arms race next. In fact, there is one specific safety feature that has become mandatory on all new vehicles this year that is fundamentally changing how we interact with the road. Do you know what it is? We are pulling back the curtain on the technology that is taking the drive out of driving. The technology currently rewriting the rules of the American road is a complex suite of systems known as Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, or ADAS. In 2026, we have reached a pivotal moment where the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration has finalized the integration of 4 specific technologies into the foundational 5-star safety ratings. pedestrian automatic emergency braking, lane keeping assist, blind spot warning, and blind spot intervention. This is the invisible hand that is taking the drive out of driving. For the first time in history, the government is not just measuring how well a vehicle protects you during a crash, but how effectively the vehicle's software can prevent that crash from ever happening. To understand the magnitude of this shift, imagine a driver named Liam in Seattle. Liam is driving home in a 2026 midsize SUV after a long shift. He is fatigued, and for a split second his focus drifts to a notification on his dashboard. In that exact moment, the car in front of him slams on its brakes to avoid a stray dog. In a vehicle from 15 years ago, Liam would have likely caused a high-speed rear-end collision. But in 2026, Liam's vehicle is equipped with a high-resolution forward-looking camera and a mid-range radar unit. Before Liam's foot even touches the brake pedal, the car has already calculated the rate of closure, sounded an audible forward collision warning, and initiated automatic emergency braking, or AEB. The system applies maximum hydraulic pressure to the calipers, bringing the 3-ton vehicle to a dead stop inches from the car ahead. This technology is no longer an optional luxury. It is becoming a mechanical prerequisite. The data from 2026 shows that AEB systems are projected to prevent at least 24,000 injuries annually in the United States alone. However, this brings us to the safety arms race and the physics of kinetic energy that most consumers ignore. There is a psychological phenomenon where drivers like Liam feel so protected by their high-tech, heavy SUVs that they begin to take more risks, a concept known as risk homeostasis. We believe that because the car can see for us and because we are surrounded by 5,000 pounds of steel, we are invincible. But the laws of physics are indifferent to your safety ratings. Kinetic energy is calculated by the formula E K equals 2, 1, mv, 2, where m is mass and v is velocity. Because the velocity is squared, speed is the primary killer, but mass is the secondary force that dictates who survives a multi-vehicle collision. Recent 2026 data analysis of over 30,000 fatal crashes reveals a stark crash incompatibility crisis. When a large SUV or a light-duty pickup truck, the vehicles Americans love most, collides with a smaller hatchback or sedan, the occupants of the smaller vehicle are 40 to 50% more likely to suffer a fatality for every 1,000 pounds of weight difference between the two cars. Weight difference increased fatality risk for lighter vehicle. 500 pounds 15% to 20%, 1,000 pounds 40% to 50%, 2,000 pounds 70% to 85%. This has created what experts call autobesity. To stay safe in 2026, Americans are buying larger and larger vehicles, which in turn forces everyone else to buy larger vehicles to avoid being the lighter partner in a collision. This arms race has an unintended victim: the pedestrian. As hood heights have risen to accommodate massive grilles and cooling systems, the blind zone directly in front of a modern truck can be as long as 11 feet. This means a driver might not see a child crossing the street directly in front of their bumper. This is why the 2026 mandate for pedestrian automatic emergency braking is so critical. These systems use machine learning to differentiate between a stationary mailbox and a moving human being. In 2026, these systems are now required to function effectively even in total darkness, utilizing near-infrared sensors or enhanced thermal imaging. Historical trends showed that early AEB systems struggled at night, which is when the majority of pedestrian fatalities occur. The 2026 standards have forced manufacturers to upgrade their sensor hardware, moving away from simple cameras to fusion systems that combine camera data with LiDAR or radar to create a three-dimensional map of the environment. But as we hand over control to the software, we encounter the black box problem of 2026. Modern vehicles are now software-defined vehicles. This means the mechanical components, the steering rack, the brakes, the throttle, are often no longer physically connected to your inputs. When you turn the steering wheel in many new 2026 models, you are not moving a metal rod, you are sending an electronic signal to a computer, which then tells an electric motor to turn the wheels. This is drive-by-wire technology. While this allows for incredible safety features, like a car that can automatically swerve to stay in its lane if you fall asleep, it also introduces a new kind of vulnerability. We are seeing a shift in historical trends regarding vehicle health. In the past, a mechanical failure gave you warnings: a squeak, a rattle, or a leak. In 2026, a failure might be a software bug or a sensor calibration error. If Liam's forward-facing camera is knocked out of alignment by a minor car wash incident or a pebble hit, his entire safety suite might go offline or worse, provide false positives, slamming on the brakes for a shadow under an overpass. This leads to a massive hidden cost of ownership that is just now hitting the American public in 2026. The complexity of these systems has fundamentally changed the fender bender. In 2010, if you backed into a pole and cracked your bumper, it was a $500 repair at a local body shop. In 2026, that same bumper contains ultrasonic parking sensors, a rear-view camera, and side radar units for cross-traffic alert. A simple plastic crack now requires thousands of dollars in sensor replacement and, crucially, system recalibration. You cannot just bolt on a new bumper. A technician must use specialized targets and software to ensure the radar is pointing exactly where the computer thinks it is. Case studies from insurance providers in 2026 suggest that these high repair costs are driving up premiums for everyone, regardless of their driving record. We are paying a complexity tax for the safety we demand. And this is where the story of the modern American vehicle takes a turn that most people aren't ready for. We've looked at how these cars protect you and how they think for you. But there is a silent transition happening in the way you actually pay for these features. Imagine if you bought a car with heated seats and a high-end safety suite, only to find out 3 years later that you have to pay a monthly fee just to keep them turned on. In 2026, the concept of hardware as a service is no longer a conspiracy theory. It is a business model. We are moving from being owners to being subscribers of our own transportation. This brings us to the most controversial part of our masterclass: the true cost of the 2026 vehicle and the subscription trap that is currently being integrated into your dashboard. Do you actually own the car you just bought? Or are you just renting the software that makes it move? We are breaking down the digital paywall in the next part, and the numbers will change the way you look at your monthly car payment forever. To understand why your monthly car payment feels like it is spiraling out of control in 2026, we have to look past the sticker price and into the lines of code that now govern your vehicle's every move. We have entered the era of the software-defined vehicle, or SDV. In the past, when you bought a car, you owned every nut, bolt, and circuit board within it. If it had a sunroof, you could open it. If it had heated seats, you could warm them. But today, the mechanical reality of the American vehicle has decoupled from its digital accessibility. We are seeing a fundamental shift in historical trends where the hardware is merely a shell, and the features you thought you purchased are increasingly hidden behind what industry experts call a digital paywall. Imagine a driver named David in Austin, Texas. David recently took delivery of a 2026 luxury sedan. On a surprisingly cold morning, he reaches for the button to activate his heated seats, only to receive a notification on his primary touchscreen. Feature not active. Please subscribe for $18 per month. David is confused because he can physically see the heating elements through the perforations in his leather seats. He can see the wiring under the chair. He has already paid for the mass and the materials of that heater, yet the manufacturer has remotely disabled the software handshake required to turn it on. This is the core of the features as a service, or FaaS, business model that is sweeping through the US market. From a manufacturing standpoint, this shift makes perfect sense. In 2026, it is cheaper for a company like BMW or Mercedes-Benz to build every single car with the exact same hardware, heated seats, advanced sensors, and high-output motors than it is to manage hundreds of different parts configurations on an assembly line. By standardizing the hardware and using software to lock or unlock features, they streamline production. However, for the American consumer, this creates a situation where the average new car payment has climbed to over $750 per month, yet that payment no longer grants full access to the vehicle's capabilities. Case studies from 2026 show that this model is expanding into the very performance of the engine itself. We are seeing manufacturers like Volkswagen and Mercedes-Benz offering acceleration on demand, or horsepower boosts. Imagine if David wants his car to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour 1 second faster. In the old world, he would have had to buy a different engine or install physical aftermarket parts. In 2026, the engine is already capable of that speed, but it is electronically governed by the factory software. For an additional $20 to $30 a month, the manufacturer can send an over-the-air or OTA update that remaps the engine's control unit, unlocking the extra power that was there all along. Feature typical monthly subscription annual cost. Heated seats $15 to $20, $180 to $240. Remote start, app-based, $10 to $15, $120 to $180. Enhanced navigation/traffic $15 to $25, $180 to $300. Performance/HP boost $25 to $60, $300 to $720. Advanced hands-free driving $75 to $200, $900 to $2,400. This digital gatekeeping is creating a massive secondary market for automotive jailbreaking. Much like the early days of the smartphone, 2026 has seen a rise in independent software tuners who claim they can bypass these paywalls. However, this carries significant potential outcomes, including the immediate voiding of the vehicle's warranty and the risk of being bricked by the manufacturer during a subsequent security update. In some cases, manufacturers have issued takedown notices and software patches that specifically target vehicles running unauthorized code, creating a cat-and-mouse game between owners and the companies that technically still control the vehicle's brain. But the controversy goes deeper than just heated seats. We have to talk about the data economy. In 2026, your car is essentially a massive rolling sensor suite that harvests data on everything from your braking habits to the exact location of every stop you make. A major case study involving General Motors and its OnStar service revealed the double-dipping nature of this new economy. Not only were customers paying a monthly subscription for safety and navigation services, but the manufacturer was also reportedly selling the harvested driving data to third-party insurance aggregators. This data was then used to potentially adjust insurance premiums based on aggressive driving behaviors, sometimes without the driver ever realizing their car was reporting them to their provider. This has led to a fierce legislative battle across the United States. In late 2025 and early 2026, states like New Jersey and New York passed landmark bills aimed at preventing subscription extortion. These laws specifically target features that rely on hardware already installed at the time of purchase. The argument is simple. If a consumer pays $50,000 for a machine, they should not have to pay a recurring fee to use the physical components of that machine. While these laws are a win for consumer rights, they have created a fragmented market where a car in Newark might have free heated seats, while the exact same model across the border in Pennsylvania requires a monthly fee. As we look at the broader landscape of 2026, we are moving toward a concept called Mobility as a Service or MaaS. For younger demographics in urban centers like New York or Chicago, the idea of owning a car is becoming obsolete. Instead, they are turning to comprehensive subscription plans that bundle the vehicle, insurance, maintenance, and even charging costs into one single monthly fee. Companies like Sixt and various third-party startups are leading this charge, allowing a subscriber to drive a sedan for their daily commute and swap it for an SUV for a weekend ski trip. The potential outcomes of this shift are a complete redefinition of value. In the past, a car's value was its mechanical longevity. In 2026, a car's value is increasingly tied to its digital shelf life. If a manufacturer decides to stop supporting the software on a 10-year-old model, that car could lose half its functionality overnight. We are seeing a new kind of depreciation, not based on miles driven or rust on the frame, but on the obsolescence of the processor and the compatibility of the operating system. We have explored the frames, the engines, the safety tech, and the digital paywalls that define the American vehicle in 2026. You now have the masterclass level literacy to navigate a dealership without being misled by marketing jargon. But there is one final massive piece of the puzzle we haven't touched. It is the part of the market where most Americans actually buy their cars, the used market. If you think the subscription trap is bad for new cars, wait until you see what happens when a software-defined vehicle hits the second-hand lot. Imagine buying a used car and finding out that none of the features the previous owner had actually transferred to you. This is the license transfer crisis, and it is currently destroying the resale value of some of the most popular vehicles in the US. In the next part, we are going to dive into the used car minefield of 2026. We will look at how to verify software licenses, how to spot digital odometer tampering, and why the traditional lemon law might not protect you in a world where the lemon is a line of code. Do you know how to check the battery health of a 5-year-old EV before you sign the paperwork? If you don't, you might be buying a $40,000 paperweight. We are going there next. The used car market in 2026 has become a digital minefield where the traditional advice of checking the oil and kicking the tires is no longer enough to protect your investment. We are seeing a historical trend where the average age of a vehicle on American roads has climbed to a record 13 years, meaning more consumers than ever are wading into the pre-owned segment. But buying a used vehicle today is no longer just a mechanical gamble. It is a software audit. If you are looking at a 4-year-old vehicle on a lot in 2026, you are not just buying a chassis and an engine. You are inheriting a complex digital history that could contain hidden costs capable of doubling your projected expenditure overnight. Imagine a buyer named Marcus in Atlanta, Georgia. Marcus finds what looks like the deal of a lifetime: a 2023 high-end electric SUV, with only 20,000 miles for a price that seems significantly below market value. To the untrained eye, the car is pristine. The interior smells new, the paint is flawless, and the dashboard displays a full 300-mile range. Marcus signs the paperwork, drives home, and wakes up the next morning to a devastating discovery. When he tries to engage the semi-autonomous driving mode that was active during his test drive, the screen informs him that the feature is disabled. Marcus has just become a victim of the license transfer crisis of 2026. In this new landscape, many premium features, from performance boosts to advanced safety suites, are tied to the original owner's account, not the vehicle's VIN. When a vehicle is traded in or sold, the manufacturer's server detects a change in ownership and can remotely strip the vehicle back to its base configuration. This is the digital reset. Marcus thought he was buying a fully loaded vehicle, but because he didn't verify the feature portability in the sales contract, he is now driving a base model shell that requires thousands of dollars in reactivation fees to restore its original functionality. Case studies from 2026 suggest that as many as 30% of used luxury vehicle buyers are experiencing some form of feature ghosting within the first week of ownership. To avoid this, you must master the 2026 used car software audit. This starts with demanding a digital build sheet from the seller. This is a certified document that lists which software features are permanent to the hardware and which are temporary subscriptions. If the seller cannot provide this, you are flying blind. Furthermore, you must check for digital odometer tampering. While it was once a matter of physical gears, in 2026, unscrupulous sellers use OBD2 injection tools to rewrite the mileage stored in the dashboard's display. However, the true mileage is often mirrored in multiple hidden locations, such as the transmission control module or the airbag deployment log. A professional 2026 inspection involves using a high-level diagnostic scanner to cross-reference these modules. If the dashboard says 20,000 miles but the transmission log shows 60,000, you have found a digital rollback. Checkpoint what to look for verification method. Battery state of health, so percentage, 80% or higher. OBD2 Dongle Plus Specialist app. Software license status transferable versus subscription certified digital build sheet. Module mileage sync mismatches between ECU and dash multi-module diagnostic scan. OTA history failed or pending critical updates infotainment system menu. Data privacy reset removal of previous owner's data factory master reset confirmation. The most critical component of this audit, especially for the surging used EV market in 2026, is the battery state of health, or SO. Imagine if you bought a gasoline car but the fuel tank shrunk by 5% every year. That is effectively what happens with lithium-ion degradation. In 2026, the industry has standardized the SO grading system. A battery with 90 to 100% SO is considered excellent, while 80 to 85% is acceptable. If a vehicle shows an SO below 80%, you are entering the investigate zone. At this level, the potential outcomes include significantly reduced cold weather range and a faster approach to the manufacturer's warranty replacement threshold, which typically sits at 70%. But you cannot trust the range estimate on the dashboard, often called the guessometer. To get a true reading in 2026, you should perform a DC fast charge stress test during your pre-purchase inspection. By taking the battery from 20% to 80% at a high-speed charger, you can observe the thermal management curve. If the charging speed drops off prematurely or the cooling fans sound excessively loud, it could indicate internal cell resistance or a failing thermal management system. Repairs that in 2026 can cost more than the engine replacement on a traditional truck. We also have to address the structural integrity of the used 2026 market. Because modern vehicles use so many mixed materials, aluminum, ultra-high-strength steel, and carbon fiber, traditional bodywork is becoming a lost art. If a used vehicle has been in a minor collision, the potential outcomes for its safety systems are profound. A slight misalignment of the frame, invisible to the naked eye, can render the ADAS sensors we discussed in Part 5 completely useless or dangerously inaccurate. In 2026, a clean Carfax is no longer a shield. You must look for sensor recalibration logs. If a bumper was replaced but the radar wasn't recalibrated by a certified technician, you are essentially driving a vehicle with a blindfold. Historical trends show that as vehicles become more complex, the right to repair movement has become the battleground for the American consumer. In 2026, many manufacturers are attempting to lock independent mechanics out of their software ecosystems. This means that if you buy a used vehicle that is out of warranty, you might be forced to return to the expensive dealership for even the most basic software resets. This service monopoly is a hidden cost that is currently depressing the resale value of certain brands. When you choose a used vehicle in 2026, you are also choosing a repair ecosystem. Brands that embrace open-source diagnostic data are seeing higher residual values because they are cheaper for the average American to maintain long-term. Case studies from the 2026 market highlight a character named Chloe in Denver. Chloe opted for a used vehicle from a manufacturer that supports third-party data access. When her infotainment system glitched, she didn't have to wait 3 weeks for a dealership appointment. A local independent specialist was able to flash the system for a fraction of the cost. This is the level of due diligence required today. You are not just buying a car, you are buying a relationship with a software provider. We have deconstructed the frame, the engine, the digital paywalls, and the used car minefield. You are now more informed than 99% of the people on the road. But there is one final category of vehicle that defies all the logic we have discussed so far. It is the category where emotion overrides engineering, where depreciation sometimes turns into appreciation, and where the rules of 2026 don't seem to apply. We are talking about the enthusiast and specialty market. From the rise of the analog revival to the high-stakes world of vehicle collecting in a digital age, there is a specific type of car that is actually gaining value as the rest of the market becomes more automated. Do you know which obsolete technology is currently fetching the highest premiums at American auctions? And why is the most dangerous car to drive in 2026 suddenly the most desirable? We are entering the world of the mechanical purist next, and it will change how you think about the future of driving. The mechanical purist movement in 2026 is not just a hobby. It is a full-scale rebellion against the digitalization of the American driving experience. As vehicles become more automated, more connected, and more reliant on subscription models, a significant portion of the U.S. market is turning back to what we call analog vehicles. These are cars from an era where the driver was the primary computer, where the connection between the pedal and the engine was a physical steel cable, and where a software update couldn't remotely disable your steering. In 2026, we are seeing the potential outcomes of this nostalgia reflected in the skyrocketing prices of vehicles that were considered obsolete only a decade ago. Imagine a driver named Julian in Los Angeles. Julian spends his workdays in a 2026 electric sedan that handles 90% of the driving for him. It is quiet, efficient, and entirely sterile. On the weekends, however, Julian drives a 1990s Japanese sports car with a 5-speed manual transmission. There is no lane-keeping assist, no automatic emergency braking, and no touchscreen. To Julian, this isn't just a car. It is a sensory escape. This analog revival is driven by a desire for tactile feedback, the vibration of the shifter, the mechanical click of a physical switch, and the unmediated roar of an internal combustion engine. The centerpiece of this movement is the manual transmission. In 2026, the manual gearbox has nearly vanished from the new car market, relegated to a handful of enthusiast models like the Mazda MX-5 Miata or the Toyota GR86. Historical trends show that while an automatic or dual-clutch transmission can shift gears in milliseconds, faster than any human ever could, the purist doesn't care about lap times. They care about engagement. The act of rev matching a downshift, perfectly timing the release of the clutch, and feeling the gears mesh is a skill that is becoming a lost art in the United States. Because of this scarcity, used cars equipped with manual transmissions are now commanding a purist premium of 20 to 30% over their automatic counterparts. But it goes deeper than just the gearbox. We are seeing a massive surge in interest for hydraulic steering systems. Before the industry transitioned to electric power steering or EPS to save fuel, vehicles used a hydraulic pump driven by the engine to assist the driver. This system provided a level of road feel that modern electric systems struggle to replicate. In a hydraulic system, you can feel the texture of the asphalt through the rim of the steering wheel. You can feel the front tires losing grip in a rainstorm before the car even begins to slide. To a mechanical purist in 2026, the modern drive-by-wire systems we discussed in Part 5 feel like playing a video game with a disconnected controller. Vehicle model 2016 average price 2026 average price key, purist feature.
BMW M3, E46 Generation, 18.00055, 000 hydraulic steering, S54 inline 6.
Toyota Supra, A80 Generation, $45,000 $160,000 2JZ engine tunability. Porsche 911, 993 Generation, $60,000 $210,000 last of the air-cooled engines. Honda S2000 $15,000 $42,000 9,000 revolutions per minute redline / 6-speed manual. Case studies from high-end American auctions like Bring a Trailer or Barrett Jackson show that the most dangerous cars to drive in 2026 are often the most coveted. Take the 1990s Dodge Viper, for example. It has a massive V10 engine, no traction control and no anti-lock brakes. In the eyes of a modern safety inspector, it is a nightmare. But in the 2026 market, its raw, unforgiving nature makes it a masterpiece of mechanical purity. Buyers are willing to pay a premium for the risk because it represents a level of driver accountability that has been engineered out of every other aspect of modern life. However, owning an analog vehicle in 2026 comes with its own set of technical and logistical hurdles. The first is parts obsolescence. As manufacturers pivot entirely to EV components, the specialized gaskets, sensors, and trim pieces for 30-year-old internal combustion cars are becoming increasingly difficult to find. This has given rise to the restomod industry. Imagine if Julian's 1990s sports car was upgraded with modern LED lighting, a 3D printed intake manifold, and a contemporary climate control system, all while keeping the original engine and manual transmission. This hybrid of vintage soul and modern reliability is the sweet spot of the 2026 enthusiast market. Then there is the fuel crisis for the purist. With the expansion of high ethanol blends and the gradual phasing out of traditional 91-octane premium gasoline in some urban regions, owners of older performance cars are having to install flex fuel sensors and upgraded fuel lines to prevent the corrosive ethanol from eating through their vintage rubber seals. This is a technical nuance that most beginners overlook. If you buy a classic car in 2026 and run modern pump gas without checking your fuel system's compatibility, you might be looking at a catastrophic engine fire within months of ownership. We must also discuss the analog appreciation of the interior. In a world of massive, glowing iPads glued to dashboards, there is a renewed respect for physical analog gauges. There is a psychological calmness that comes from watching a physical needle sweep across a dial, rather than a digital pixel flickering on a screen. In 2026, we are even seeing some luxury manufacturers like Pagani or Bugatti double down on jeweled mechanical instruments that look more like a Swiss watch than a car dashboard. These are built to last centuries, whereas the high-definition screens in a 2026 commuter car have an expected lifespan of only 10 to 15 years before the backlight dims or the touch interface fails. This brings us to the right to repair in the enthusiast world. Because these analog cars lack the encrypted software locks of modern 2026 models, they are the only vehicles left that a person can truly work on in their own garage with a basic set of wrenches. This mechanical autonomy is a powerful draw. For someone like Julian, being able to change his own spark plugs or adjust his own valves provides a sense of ownership that is impossible with the 2026 black box vehicle that requires a dealer-only laptop just to reset the oil light. But as the world moves toward a more regulated, automated future, the mechanical purist faces a looming threat: road access. In 2026, we are seeing the first discussions of autonomous-only zones in major city centers. These are areas where, for the potential outcomes of safety and traffic flow, human-driven vehicles, especially those without modern ADAS features, might eventually be restricted or charged a significant congestion tax. The dream of the open road is clashing with the reality of the smart city. We have moved through the frames, the engines, the digital paywalls, the used market minefields, and the high-stakes world of analog enthusiasts. You now understand that a vehicle can be a tool, a tech gadget, or a piece of mechanical art. But there is one final overarching question that every American must answer before they sign their name on a title in 2026. It is not about what you drive but how you pay for the space it occupies. The hidden infrastructure of the American vehicle is not just the roads. It is the logistics of living with a car. From the skyrocketing costs of auto insurance algorithms to the invisible taxes buried in your registration, there is a financial framework that can make even a cheap car more expensive than a house. In the next part, we are going to break down the total cost of mobility in 2026. We are looking at the math that dealerships don't want you to see, and we are uncovering the regional pricing paradox that could save you $10,000 just by driving across a state line. Do you know which state has the lowest life cycle costs for a vehicle in 2026? It's not the one you think. We are diving into the economics of the American driveway next. To understand the economics of the American driveway in 2026, we have to look past the sticker price on the window and into the brutal reality of the total cost of ownership, or TCO. Most consumers make the mistake of focusing on the monthly loan payment, but that is only 1/3 of the financial story. In 2026, the average annual cost to keep a vehicle on the road has surged to over $11,000. This includes insurance, fuel, maintenance, registration, and the single largest financial drain that most people never see on a bank statement: depreciation. If you are not calculating your vehicle's life cycle cost, you are essentially driving a hole in your savings account. Imagine a driver named Ethan in 2026. Ethan is looking at a new midsize SUV with a sticker price of $45,000. He calculates that with a standard 5-year loan, his payment will be roughly $800 a month. He thinks he can afford it, but Ethan is ignoring the 1585 rule of 2026 automotive economics. Historically, the purchase price only accounts for about 15% of the total utility value over the life of the vehicle, while 85% of the total expenditure happens after you drive off the lot. For Ethan, that $800 payment is just the entry fee. Once he factors in the 2026 national average for full coverage insurance, which has climbed to nearly $3,000 annually, and the escalating costs of specialized synthetic oil changes and sensor-heavy maintenance, his true monthly cost is closer to $1,500. Vehicle type: 5-year depreciation, 5-year maintenance, 5-year insurance, total 5-year cost.
Compact sedan, EG, Corolla, $8,500, $3,200, $8,400, $30,500.
Midsize SUV, e.g. Explorer, $18,000, $5,800, $12,500, $54,000. Full-size truck, e.g. F-150, $22,000, $6,500, $14,000, $68,000. Electric SUV, e.g. Model Y, $24,000, $2,100, $15,500, $62,000. Depreciation remains the silent killer of American wealth. In 2026, the depreciation curve has become more volatile due to the rapid advancement of software and battery technology. A vehicle that lacks the latest 2026 sensor suite or the newest high-density battery chemistry can lose 40% of its value in the first 36 months. This is why residual value is the most important metric you've probably never heard of. Case studies from 2026 show that brands like Toyota and Honda continue to dominate the market not just because of reliability, but because they hold their value better than almost any other asset in the driveway. Buying a car with poor residual value is like trying to fill a bucket with a hole in the bottom. No matter how much you save on the initial price, the lost equity will eventually catch up to you. This leads us to the regional pricing paradox. Do you know which state has the lowest life cycle cost for a vehicle in 2026? It is New Hampshire. If you live in the live free or die state, you are participating in a unique economic ecosystem. New Hampshire has no state sales tax, meaning a buyer like Ethan saves nearly $4,000 upfront on a $40,000 truck. Furthermore, New Hampshire's registration fees are calculated on a declining scale based on the vehicle's age, and its insurance premiums are among the lowest in the nation, averaging just $1,700 for full coverage. Contrast this with the most expensive state in 2026, Louisiana. In Louisiana, the combination of high sales tax, a litigious environment that drives insurance premiums to over $4,000 a year, and the hidden tax of poorly maintained roads, which costs the average driver an extra $600 a year in premature suspension and tire wear, creates a massive financial burden. Over a 5-year period, owning the exact same vehicle in Louisiana can cost $17,000 more than it does in New Hampshire. This is a staggering geography tax that most Americans never factor into their relocation or purchasing decisions. In 2026, We are also seeing the rise of algorithmic insurance. This is a major shift in historical trends where your premium is no longer just based on your age and driving record, but on your telematics score. Imagine Ethan's insurance company offers him a discount if he installs an app that monitors his braking, cornering, and speed. While this can lead to lower premiums for conservative drivers, it creates a data tax for everyone else. By 2026, these algorithms have become so granular that they can cross-reference your driving habits with your credit score and even your social media activity to predict your risk profile. This is the dark side of the 2026 vehicle economy. You are being watched, and every hard brake is costing you money in real time. Then there are the hidden infrastructure fees of 2026. As more Americans transition to electric vehicles, states are losing billions in gas tax revenue, which was historically used to fund road repairs. To compensate, over 35 states have now implemented EV registration surcharges. If Ethan buys an electric SUV in 2026, he might be hit with an annual $400 road use fee just to get his license plate. This is an attempt to level the playing field between gas-powered vehicles and EVs, but it often catches new buyers off guard, effectively erasing the fuel savings of the first several thousand miles of driving. To beat this system, smart buyers in 2026 are practicing regional arbitrage. Imagine a character named Jasmine in Chicago. Used car prices in the Midwest are historically higher for SUVs due to high demand for all-wheel drive. However, in Sunbelt states like Florida or Texas, the market for two-wheel drive SUVs is saturated, driving prices down. Jasmine realizes that by spending $400 on a plane ticket and driving a vehicle back from Orlando, she can save $6,000 on the purchase price. She avoids the salt belt rust of a northern car and gets a better equipped vehicle for a fraction of the local cost. This is the 2026 playbook. Expand your search radius, understand the tax implications of where you register the vehicle, and never, ever buy based on the monthly payment alone. We have now covered the mechanical DNA, the digital paywalls, the used car traps, and the brutal economics of ownership. You are now equipped with a level of automotive literacy that puts you in the top 1% of consumers. You know how to spot a software-defined lemon, you understand the physics of the safety arms race, and you know how to navigate the geography tax of the US market. But there is one final critical question left to answer. As we stand here in 2026, the very definition of what it means to be a driver is changing. We are moving toward a world where the car might not need you at all. Is it still worth it to buy a car today? Or should you wait for the autonomous revolution to finally arrive? In the final part of our masterclass, we are looking at the end game. We are going to reveal the 10-year forecast for the American vehicle, and we will give you the definitive answer to the ultimate question. Which specific vehicle type being sold today is the only one that will still be relevant, legal, and valuable in the year 2036? The answer is not an EV, and it's not a truck. We are finishing this journey with the most important prediction of the decade. The final part starts right now. The transition to the year 2036 is not a leap into a science fiction utopia, but a slow, grinding evolution of the American infrastructure that will leave millions of current vehicle owners behind. As we stand here in 2026, we are witnessing the peak of the transition period. We have moved from the mechanical simplicity of the past to the digital complexity of the present, and the road ahead is dominated by one word: autonomy. But the autonomous revolution is not hitting every part of the United States at the same speed. We are seeing a widening mobility gap between the high-tech urban corridors of San Francisco and New York and the vast, unconnected stretches of rural Montana or West Virginia. This geographical divide is what will dictate the value of your vehicle over the next decade. Imagine a driver named Caleb in the year 2036. Caleb lives in a mid-sized American city that has fully implemented Level 4 autonomous zones. In these areas, human-driven vehicles are restricted to certain hours or are subject to heavy congestion and safety surcharges. Most of Caleb's neighbors have given up car ownership entirely, opting for robotaxi subscriptions that provide door-to-door service for a monthly fee. However, Caleb still owns a personal vehicle because he frequently travels to see family in a rural county where the roads are unmapped by high-definition LiDAR, and the 6G network is spotty at best. The vehicle Caleb chose back in 2026 is the only one that remains fully functional, legal, and highly valuable in this fractured landscape. The vehicle is the plug-in hybrid crossover, specifically one with a decoupled architecture. To understand why this is the ultimate survivor, we have to look at the historical trends of the last decade. Pure internal combustion vehicles are facing increasing carbon penalties and rising fuel costs as refineries shift production. Pure electric vehicles, while excellent in cities, still face the infrastructure bottleneck in rural America, where the electrical grid has not been upgraded to handle millions of high-speed chargers. The plug-in hybrid, or PHEV, is the bridge that doesn't just span the gap, it lives in both worlds. But the reason Caleb's specific 2026 model is so valuable in 2036 is its software resilience. While many 2026 EVs were built with closed-loop proprietary software that became obsolete when the manufacturer went bankrupt or stopped issuing updates, Caleb chose a model built on an open standard platform. In 2036, the most valuable vehicles are those that can be serviced by independent, digital mechanics. These are professionals who can reflash an older vehicle's brain to remain compatible with new smart city protocols. If your vehicle cannot talk to the city's traffic management system in 2036, it will be geo-fenced out of the most efficient routes. Case studies from the early 2030s show that the potential outcomes for proprietary vehicles were grim. Thousands of high-end electric luxury cars became digital bricks because their cloud-based operating systems were no longer supported. The vehicles that survived, the ones that are fetching record prices on the 2036 used market, are the modular ones. These are vehicles where the battery cells can be easily swapped for newer chemistry, and where the infotainment screen is a standardized unit that can be upgraded like a desktop computer. This hardware-software decoupling is the secret to a 10-year lifespan in the digital age. We also have to address the multi-fuel reality of 2036. As the US moves away from traditional gasoline, we are seeing the rise of synthetic e-fuels. These are carbon-neutral liquids that can run in existing internal combustion engines. Because Caleb's PHEV has a high-efficiency engine designed for these clean fuels, he isn't dependent on the fluctuating price of lithium or the availability of a charging station during a grid outage. He has energy sovereignty. In a decade marked by climate volatility and infrastructure stress, the ability to switch between grid power and liquid fuel is the ultimate insurance policy. Vehicle category grid independence software longevity resale value forecast. Pure internal combustion low fuel costs, high analog, moderate collector. Pure electric closed, high charging low obsolescence low. Pure electric modular, high charging, high upgradable, high. Plug-in hybrid modular, maximum high maximum. As we look at the 10-year forecast, we must discuss the safety mandates of 2030. By that year, the Department of Transportation implemented the V2X, or Vehicle-to-Everything communication requirement. Every car on the road must constantly broadcast its position, speed, and intent to every other car around it. This effectively ended the era of unseen accidents. If you are buying a vehicle today in 2026, you must ensure it has the hardware capable of a V2X retrofit. If the car's electrical architecture is too primitive to handle the data stream of 2030, it will be relegated to off-road use only, crashing its resale value. Imagine if you spent $60,000 today on a lifestyle truck that lacks high-speed data bus architecture. By 2032, that truck might be illegal to drive on a major interstate during peak hours because it can't sync with the autonomous truck platoons moving at 80 miles per hour. This is the compatibility trap that is currently being set for uninformed buyers. The masterclass lesson here is simple. Don't just buy for the features you want today. Buy for the connectivity requirements of tomorrow. The American driveway of 2036 will look very different. There will be fewer cars, but the cars that remain will be more capable, more durable, and significantly more integrated into our lives. We are moving toward a circular economy for vehicles. The 2026 practice of crushing and shredding cars after 10 years is being replaced by remanufacturing. The frame and the interior are kept, while the motors, batteries, and sensors are cycled out every few years. The vehicle Caleb drives in 2036 has had its battery swapped twice and its ADAS brain upgraded 3 times. But the core chassis, the unibody frame we discussed in Part 1, is still the same. We have deconstructed every layer of the US vehicle market, from the ladder frames of heavy-duty trucks to the invisible paywalls of modern software. You now possess the automotive DNA to see through the marketing and understand the mechanical and digital truth. You know that a car is no longer just a way to get from point A to point B. It is a data harvesting node, a kinetic energy weapon, a financial asset, and for some, a final bastion of mechanical freedom. The era of the beginner is over. You have completed the deep dive. You understand that the perfect vehicle doesn't exist in a brochure. It exists at the intersection of your specific geography, your long-term financial goals, and your willingness to maintain the ghost in the machine. As you walk onto a lot today, or browse a digital showroom, you are no longer a target for a salesperson's pitch. You are an auditor of engineering and a strategist of mobility. The road is changing, the rules are being rewritten, but you now have the map. Safe driving, and we will see you in the future.